kid. And then by that time we had moved to Tacoma. And while at Tacoma, Bernie, we saw a lot of Puyallup Indians. This is in the 50s, 1955 on, and we saw a lot of very poor Indians, Puyallups and Muckleshoots, and Nisquallies, and Bernie became friends with several of them from these 3 different tribes, and he could see that they were having a very hard time just surviving. And they got most of their money from fishing salmon, in the rivers, the Nisqually River and the Puyallup River, and even Lake Washington, and he knew that there was a big difference between the Indians here on the coast and as compared to us back there in eastern Washington. And he soon realized the big difference was that we didn't have anything, We had nothing of value. The whites had taken it all. But at least the coast Indians, the Muckleshoots, the Puyallups, and the Nisquallies had something. They had salmon. But the trouble was the state of Washington and white sportsmen didn't believe that. They believed all the salmon was theirs. And so through those years, Bernie met and teamed up with a fellow by the name of Bob Sataycum, who's a Puyallup. And the 2 of them fished together, but also they had several tough times against white sportsmen and the state of Washington authorities, on the rivers where they fished.
What years were that?
That was
was that after he was in the military?
Yeah, after he came back after 1959. Yeah. Anyway, they fought together, and into the 60s they were still fishing together and fighting, white sportsmen and the government, the state of Washington rather. And then finally, the Indians could not get good press in the newspapers then. The newspapers were not interested in treaties or Indians or fishing. And so somehow, and I don't exactly remember how this was done, but Marlon Brando came up in 1964. And Marlon Brando was really a friend of the Indians, probably the best friend the Indians ever had. And because of him, the press got interested, And all of a sudden, they started telling the Indian side of the story. And Brando was very instrumental in working with Bob and my brother Bernie into getting the news out, that Indians really had a right to this.